The betrayal that shattered my life, a story of love, trust, and moving on. I once believed I had the perfect life. From the outside, everything appeared flawless. I had a loving wife, 2 children who filled my world with joy, a stable job that paid the bills, and a home that was mine to create memories in. My marriage to Adrina was supposed to be forever. Together, we had built a life that was full of dreams, promises, and hope for the future. There was no question in my mind that we had everything we needed to be happy. But everything changed in an instant, and the perfect world I had so carefully crafted came crashing down. The truth about my wife's betrayal shattered everything. In a moment of unimaginable pain, I found myself questioning not only my relationship with her but my entire sense of reality. I didn't see it coming, but once it happened, I couldn't ignore it. The painful discovery of her infidelity completely changed the course of my life. I'll never forget the first time I met Adrina. I was in my mid-20s, fresh out of college, and living in a small city that felt like a stepping stone to something bigger. When Adrina entered my life, it felt like the universe had decided to throw me a bone. She was everything I could have asked for: intelligent, driven, beautiful, and kind. Her infectious laughter could light up any room, and she had an effortless way of making everyone around her feel comfortable. We became fast friends and eventually started dating. In the early days, our relationship was like a whirlwind. We connected instantly, and it felt like we had known each other for years. We shared everything, from our dreams about the future to our favorite movies. We were inseparable. When she moved in with me, it felt natural, like it was always meant to be that way. I could picture a lifetime with her, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had everything figured out. A few years later, I proposed. The moment she said yes, I knew I had found the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. We bought a house and settled into a routine that, to me, seemed perfect. The next chapter was supposed to be filled with growing our family. Adrina and I had 2 beautiful children, a daughter, Lily, and a son, Ben. Parenthood came with its challenges, of course, but we navigated it together. At least, I thought we did. I was proud of the life we had built. I had a good job that supported us, and Adrina was an amazing mother who always put our kids first. But beneath the surface, things began to change. I didn't see it at first, but now, looking back, I realized there were signs all along. The first time I noticed something was off with Adrina, I brushed it aside. She had become more distant, but I convinced myself it was just the stress of raising 2 young kids. She was busier than ever, and I had my work to focus on, so I didn't think much of it. But over time, I began to notice that she was no longer as engaged with me as she once had been. Conversations became shorter. I was getting fewer smiles, fewer thoughtful gestures. Her attentiveness was replaced by a constant busyness, as if she was always distracted by something else. It wasn't just one thing, but a combination of small changes that slowly piled up. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things. She had a lot on her plate, what parent doesn't? But it wasn't just her. There was something about the way she looked at her phone, the way she would quietly step into another room to answer calls. I didn't want to question her, and I didn't want to become one of those paranoid partners. But the unease was gnawing at me. One evening, I noticed her phone sitting on the kitchen counter. It was buzzing. At first, I ignored it, thinking I had no right to intrude. But something compelled me to take a look. I unlocked the phone, and to my horror, I saw the name David pop up on the screen. David was a guy she worked with, a colleague, but not someone I had ever paid much attention to. The message was short but telling: "I can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible." I froze. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was staring me in the face. I had to know more. So, I spent the rest of the evening trying to distract myself from the gnawing feeling in my gut, but my mind kept wandering back to the phone, back to the message. The next day, I confronted her. My voice trembled as I asked about the message, about David. She broke down immediately, apologizing profusely. She confessed that she had been having an affair with David for the past 6 months. I couldn't process it at first. My mind raced as she explained how it happened, how she was feeling lonely and neglected, how she needed something more than what I was offering. It was a punch to the stomach. I felt betrayed, blindsided. She begged me to forgive her, to give her another chance. She promised it would never happen again, and for the sake of our family, I decided to give her a second chance. We went to therapy. We worked through the pain, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. But the truth was, I never fully trusted her again. There was a wall between us, one I couldn't break down. We were still living together, still raising our kids, but it felt different. I was different. I wasn't the same person anymore. For a while, things seemed to get better. At least, that's what I convinced myself. I started to feel like maybe we were going to be okay. But then the nagging feelings started creeping in again. Adrina seemed distant. She was still busy with work and her responsibilities as a mother, but this time, something felt even more off. I noticed her spending more time with David again. They would text each other constantly, and whenever I asked her about it, she would get defensive or evasive. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. I tried to convince myself that it was just my insecurities taking over. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Then one evening, Adrina told me she was meeting a few colleagues for dinner. She was going out with David again, and she assured me it was strictly professional. I didn't believe her. I should have trusted my gut. But I let it slide, thinking that maybe I was just being paranoid. I didn't know what made me stay up that night. Maybe it was the way she kissed me goodbye, too quickly, too coldly. Maybe it was the fact that I just couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Whatever it was, I found myself getting in the car and following her. I didn't want to do it. I knew it was wrong, but I had to know. I followed her to a small restaurant, where I saw her laughing and sitting close to David. Their hands brushed, their eyes lingered on each other in a way that was all too familiar. I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't just some passing fling. This was a deep, ongoing affair that Adrina hadn't been honest about. She hadn't been truthful about her feelings or her actions. I watched them for a while, unable to tear myself away. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just an emotional affair anymore. It was something much worse. The next morning, I confronted her. I didn't even have to ask for the truth. It was clear. Adrina broke down, pleading with me, telling me that she never meant for this to happen, that she loved me, and that she had made a huge mistake. She was sorry. She wanted to fix it. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't forgive her again. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. This wasn't a slip-up. This was something far worse. This was a betrayal that cut to the core. I realized I had been living in denial for too long, trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. But the truth was that it wasn't fine. I couldn't continue living a lie. I packed my bags, told her I needed space, and left. I needed to get away from the constant reminder of her betrayal. I needed to figure out who I was outside of the marriage I had spent years building. I couldn't stay in that toxic environment, not when my trust had been destroyed in such a fundamental way. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. I moved into a small apartment, and the loneliness was overwhelming. I spent days just sitting there, trying to process the pain, the anger, and the confusion. I had so many questions, but no answers. I had invested so much of myself in the relationship, and now I was left with nothing. But through the pain, I began to heal. I sought therapy, began focusing on myself for the first time in years, and slowly started rebuilding my life. I started to realize that I wasn't defined by my past. I wasn't defined by my marriage or Adrina's betrayal. I was my own person, and I deserved to be happy. I started making plans for my future, one that didn't involve her, one that didn't involve the pain I had endured. Eventually, I filed for divorce. It wasn't about seeking revenge or punishing Adrina. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about finding peace, peace that I could only find by walking away from the wreckage of my marriage. In the end, I learned that betrayal cuts deeper than anything else. It's not just about the act itself, it's about the loss of trust, the loss of what you thought was real. But I also learned that healing takes time. Moving on doesn't happen overnight. If you find yourself in a similar situation, know that you are not alone. It's okay to walk away from something that's no longer healthy. You deserve honesty, respect, and love. Don't settle for anything less. If you found this story helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, your happiness is worth fighting for. Take care of yourselves.